This is going to be a demonstration to show you the value of having a pressure gauge that's located on the output of the pumps that feed the boiler. Some of the problems that occurred is when you're driving the car, you think you're feeding the boiler with water. You know, you're not quite sure. The only indication you have is looking at the sight glass to see if the boiler is actually being filled. So I put this pressure gauge in the system, and it's on the output of the pumps. So when you're driving the car, depending on if you have the boiler being bypassed, the boiler water being bypassed, or going to the boiler, it tells you what's going on. And I'm going to demonstrate it. What I'm showing you right now is this is the pressure gauge on the boiler itself. That pressure gauge is reading 100 psi right now. So I'm up to pressure, and this is the gauge that I added that shows you the water pump pressure as it's pumping in the boiler. And what occurs is when the boiler is being filled, that pressure will show you pulses, and the pulses will match the boiler pulse pressure. So you'll see right now, you'll see the pressure come up to 100 pounds on this gauge here, and you'll see it pulsing every time the engine turns over. You'll see 2 pulses since there's 2 pumps on the engine. When I bypass, you'll see that pressure gauge drop to 0, so I know I'm not filling the boiler. It gives me a positive feedback as I'm driving the car to see if I have boiler water going in or not going in. So what I'm going to do at this point in time is I'm going to open the throttle up and give the engine a little water. And what you're going to see is as the engine's running, you'll see this pump pulsing, and every pulse of that gauge is a pump supplying water to the boiler. Now when I turn the bypass valve so it goes into the bypass mode, what you're going to see is this gauge is going to drop. So as you're driving the car, whether the boiler is being bypassed or not, you'll be able to immediately tell what's going on, and it takes the guesswork out of driving the car and filling the boiler. So right now I'm going to run the engine slowly, and then I'm going to bypass the water to the boiler. And you'll see that the gauge now drops to 0 since there's no pressure on the pumps anymore, since it's being bypassed back to the tanks. So as you're driving the car, when you see that occur, you know the boiler's not being filled. And I'm going to come out of the bypass mode and go back into the boiler feed mode. And what you'll notice is the pressure comes back up again. And now I'm feeding water back into the boiler again. So it gives me a positive feedback as far as boiler feed. And that's very important when you're driving this, because you can't always look back at the sight glass since it's kind of behind you. So this gauge really becomes a valuable tool to use as you're driving the car. That's it for this video.